Hi, happy Wednesday. Um, I'm actually reading from my bound dissertation because my clipped paper dissertation is somewhere else. So I'm going to pick up where I left off yesterday. Um, this dissertation study is intended as a jumping point for advancement of empirical evidence on college mental health. That's Banks 2016. Prototypes investigated here would be templates for further workable interventions. This study could be helpful to indicate how, with a grander attitudinal shift for these specific college and university students, these interventions would be helpful in retention. The programs were also not costly, making them easy to implement on other campuses. The implementation of programs that help students with mental illness will depend on the size of the institution, campus culture, demographics, and the structure of the campus. A small university will be more likely to have enough hours to not need additional ways to reach students struggling with mental health. However, a large university may not have those resources to reach all students because the module format can be easily spread campus wide at a large university. It provides a way to reach all students and improve mental health symptoms among students. Underrepresented groups utilize mental health services more than other students. That's Eisenberg et al. 2012. Using these easily accessible, wide scale interventions could be useful to reach the need in these communities. Also, for the LGBT community, the online interventions may provide a certain level of discretion, which can be important for these students. Eisenberg et al. 2012. Researchers have expressed that due to the increase of students with mental illness at colleges and universities, there needs for cost-effective alternatives to campus counseling centers. Based on the results of the quantitative meta-analysis, I was talking about my analysis, it is recommended that colleges and universities integrate the interventions studied here into counseling services. When integrated into available counseling resources at colleges and universities, students will have more options when choosing how to address mental health needs. These interventions will allow students who wish to be anonymous to remain so, and also they would be advantageous for students who have limited time as they are self-paced and online. For larger institutions, making these online interventions available would increase the reach of mental health services. Because counseling centers and supporting student mental health has become a priority at colleges and universities, institutions should consider using the interventions here and budgeting for that purpose. As the population of college and university students with mental illness continues to increase, the need for assisting these students will also increase. Colleges and universities should use interventions like those reviewed in the study. However, they will need to consider how to budget in a way to allow the interventions to be available to any student in need and dependent on the size of the university. Some of the approaches used in this study include the quantitative meta-analysis had limited needs in terms of resources. For example, Ahmad's study 2020 videos were used in the intervention. If the videos are dependable without paid personnel, cost per individual would be minimal. In lieu of an in-person course, online psychoeducational information can be provided. Stories provided by peers and had very positive results. Because professionals are not required to create these stories, this is cost effective. Recommendations for further research. The limitations of this study include the use of only 4 studies, which may be less than some institutions feel comfortable basing practices on. Future research will need additional data to confirm the program effectiveness found in this quantitative meta-analysis. However, even this limited analysis suggests colleges and universities would reap benefits for students if they implemented these interventions. Research shows that symptoms related to mental disorders dictate specific service students seek out. That's from Bourdon 2020. Information about specific types of services students may utilize in different situations could inform colleges and universities as to services should be offered to help students with specific illnesses across campus. Bourdon 2020. Future research might be considered the way in which these interventions reviewed in the current meta-analysis could benefit different student populations. More research is needed to determine the way these interventions can best be implemented in different sized schools. Also, research is needed on how these interventions work in different countries, as most took place in the United States. It would be interesting if counselors could be interviewed about different experiences, such as whether they believe they are meeting the needs of their students, where they feel they do not have necessary resources, and whether they know what options are available for interventions. Downs and Eisenberg, 2015, showed that there are important variations in treatment-seeking behaviors across certain colleges and university types. In some situations, availability of institutional and social capital were mechanisms driving these relationships. Downs and Eisenberg, 2015. This requires further research to better assess the disparities in college and university implications. Downs and Eisenberg, 2015, as these could impact the way interventions are implemented. Hundert's research, 2018, linked institutional attachment and depression symptoms in college and university students. So I want to pause here because it's really a neat thing. The more you identify with being from a university or college, it can help.
Buddy Alan. What's up, Caleb? Oh, and I can't forget you.
How effective the students do with programs for their mental health. So if you're not that attached to your school, that's going to be more problematic than if you're attached. Case in point, using myself. I was in a sorority, on yearbook, on student council. That's all I can remember right now. But I had a lot of pictures in different places. So I was very attached to where I started my college experience. I was also president of my dorm. So I ran meetings. I stuck to a budget. I organized a formal dance, which the campus dorms didn't usually do, but I'm a party hardy girl. So so I was very attached to my school. So what they're saying is that can be better in a number of ways. But let's go on and see how this ends up in my dissertation. This is a significant addition to mental health research where fostering a strong attachment to a student's college or university reduces depression. That's from Gronk 2014. The 100 study was rigorous one that included randomization and was a longitudinal study with multiple time frames for data collection. So longitudinal means over a long period of time. The more you can research something and have it go over a long period of time can strengthen your results. For instance, there aren't very long-term, there are now, but there weren't always long longitudinal studies of bipolar individuals. Now that besides lithium, there are other medicines, people are different ages with bipolar. There's so many things to study, and there's possibilities that people might be willing to be in a study for 5 to 10 years, which is going to be more valuable than just a 1-year study or a 6-month study or a 3-month study. And back to here. However, future research could expand the various ways that students build attachment to their university and if mental health interventions assist in that. Conclusions. The primary goal of this research is to assist college and university students with mental illness to have access to interventions to help them retain and graduate in 4 to 6 years with a bachelor's degree. Mental disorders commonly have their first onset at 24. Bipolar can be like 18 to 21, but they're including those 5 that are most common in the United States. An estimated 3.2 of the college students meet criteria for bipolar, schizophrenia, and other psychotic disorders. Only 18% of college students with mental health disorders are presently treated. Further, 16% of those students have anxiety disorders and 20% have depression. That is why mental health interventions are needed for college students. This study, my dissertation and my study, sought to get better information about the impact of mental health interventions. This is especially important for a college that has limited resources, but needs to funnel resources towards interventions that work the best. 3 out of 4 studies examined involved online interventions which fit into the college student's busy schedule and allow students to absorb the information in brief segments. It was found across 3 of these studies that effects of the online interventions were significant and lowered anxiety and depressive levels. That is, my research didn't necessarily have to lend or reach that result, but it did. I'll say it again. It was found across the 3 studies that the effects of online interventions were significant and lowered anxiety and depression levels. It is recommended, based on these findings, that colleges and universities explore the studies herein and utilize the interventions on their campuses as strategic initiatives. I'm so proud of myself. So I think we've almost absorbed the most pivotal parts of my dissertation for Bipolar Backroom, but we may go back to it. My name's on it. It's exciting. I say that on purpose that way. I know how to say exciting, but when I say to my students, it's really exciting, they find that amusing. So, have a good night, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.